the live stream. Hi guys. No, this is not a test. This is actually a show. We're going to do some iRacing podcasting chat. Why don't we get that shared in the Slack, Matt? Do you want to get that shared into the iRacing Slack, or shall I do that?
I can do that. I was just making a joke with Alex about this being a test.
Everything, life's a test. Life's a test.
I was going to be like, get out your pencils and don't look at your neighbor's paper.
That's the one. Yeah, like if I could put in, like, I could put myself in. See, this when I'm not willing to. Oh, look at that. That's too much. So look, I can be here. This is a bit of I can just be here in the corner of the screen, just going like, oh, hello everyone. And so now you can see me, but it's hard to describe to the panel. But yeah, look, this is great. I don't mind this. I might do this on Missed Apex, have some kind of thing like this, or I'm just here on my own at the bottom of the screen, waiting for the stream to start. I like it. It's all right. It's hanging out in it. Don't think of that with the green screen. You can just do anything. No, these aren't normally live, but we've just decided to give it a go since Steve made up a bunch of backgrounds for the show. This splash screen isn't part of that, but you can see with the lower third here below that we've got a little bit of branding and a little bit of pretty work going on with the show as well. So it seems to have quickly be earning its place within the Missed Apex stable. So Matt, tell me when you've got that shared, and we'll just get going.
I just shared it right now in the Slack.
Well, there we go. So all I need to do is open up my Audacity. I've been doing Spanner's 90s radio, where I just waffle. It's so funny. I cannot keep on track. It's worse than Remain Indoors for keeping to a topic. So my topic was competitiveness, and before I knew it, I was off talking about whatever. You just went, oh yeah, no, it was meant to be about competitiveness, and then someone sends in a request, and that's you. It just derails you for the rest of the time.
Yeah, well, sorry.
That's good fun.
I do have that ability.
It's good fun. Well, that is that's radio in a nutshell, isn't it? I got not told off, but apparently I'm meant to play like 6 tracks on my Sunday show, like 6 musics, and I got to like 5 minutes before the end of the last one. I hadn't played any tracks, hadn't played any music, hadn't done any of that. So I went, all right, here's some musics then. Don't cry. What's this? What can you see behind me? Oh no, you can see my drawer.
Green screen?
No, it's just my drawer. Hopefully that doesn't show up on the main what's it. All right, what I haven't got for this is a scene where it's just going to be all the panel. Say hello, everyone. There we go. And let's get rocking. Let's get starting. I need my little note bits. What do I say at the beginning? What do I say at the beginning of this? You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. Nope. Missed Apex iRacing? No, something different. You are listening to Missed Apex iRacing Podcast. Let's get faster. You are listening to Missed Apex iRacing Podcast, streaming live for the first time to an audience of, over 7 people at the moment. So let's hope that our panel doesn't get flustered and doesn't get stage fright. First, we are joined by a driving expert in real life and in the sim world, Brad Philpott. How's it going, Brad?
It's going really well, as you well know, because I've had a piece of equipment turn up.
You've had a new steering wheel turn up.
Yes.
See, for me though, getting when I bought one of our friends' kit off them, it meant going from a gear-driven, I think, just wheel, one of the Logitech ones, and then going to a belt-driven wheel. So there was a real difference in the feel and strength. Whereas you've just got a new pretty facade. So isn't it just that your rig is now prettier?
I mean, it definitely is prettier because the buttons even light up. But it's not just that. It is actually better objectively because I've got nicer paddles. They're adjustable. I can move them into all different places depending on how long my fingers are. I can also set way more functions because there's lots of rotary dials, and there's even a clutch bite point adjuster, which is really, really cool.
Amazing. And I hope that your old wheel isn't going to Matt to rumpets because he's fast enough anyway. How's it going, Matt?
It's going pretty well. And no, I am not fast enough this week at all. It is terrifying.
Yes, right then. I think we're going to lead off with the question you have brought to the party, Matt, because I wanted to ask you guys what you've been up to as well in the world of iRacing. I've been focusing on F3. I got quite a few races in at Okayama. I had a bit of a tiff with the wife about my plans for iRacing this week, because we had the F3 officials and the swarm that we run, and we've got the final of the Missed Apex Formula Renault 2.0 challenge. Are you joining us for that Brad, on Friday?
I was definitely planning to, but now I've got this DNLS race on Saturday morning, and I just want to be as prepared as possible for that. So I'm out of all the single-seaters this week. I'm just thrashing around the Nordschleife in preparation for that event. And I've actually got another thing on Sunday, which I don't have time to practice for.
Well, all the cool kids are doing the Missed Apex Formula Renault 2.0. But I did see your VCO effort, where you were racing with the likes of Grosjean and Verstappen and all those in this sort of pro matched with a pro sim racer, and your team lasted. Did you get to the first corner? Did you even get to the first corner?
Well, I was sat happily watching as a spotter as my teammate rolled at turn one. So no, didn't get very far in the last VCO. VCO as an organisation, I think it's called the Virtual Competition Organisation. I think that's what it stands for. They're the guys that seem to be organising a lot of these big iRacing events at the moment. They have a Nations Cup on Sunday, so have to be a real world licensed driver. So I'm teamed up with ex-Formula One driver Will Stevens, IndyCar driver Stefan Wilson, and British touring car ace Tom Ingram. So that's Team GB for Sunday. So that's the next VCO thing. Hopefully that'll go better.
So this is not meant in any way disrespectful, but I've heard of all the other guys. Like, that's quite a high-profile team that you're in.
Yeah, it is. I think hopefully I'll be the quickest, though, as a sim driver out of those guys. So I've got hopefully a decent balance, but I haven't had time to practice, and I doubt I will have time to practice before then, because although we know the cars and tracks, they've very deliberately not told us which cars are driving at which tracks to make it harder for everyone.
Now, that's interesting, because we've been having a big debate over on the F1 podcast about the proposed sprint races that Stefano Domenicali has been talking about, and it looks like we're going to have those for 3 races during the F1 season, these Saturday sprint races. And a lot of people in the comments to a tweet I said about it were talking about the lack of practice. If you want to mix things up, the way to do it is a lack of practice. So you are entering an event where they're deliberately restricting practice time. I was thinking about doing that for the next season of the Missed Apex events, because the more at the moment we put on 2 full practice sessions, which gives everybody time to like really get dialed in, get sorted with a setup, and then they turn up and they're just, the top guys are predictably up ahead. So you've got the Hattons and the Hennies and stuff, and Ellis up ahead. It could mix it up quite a bit, Matt, if we just said, right, we're not telling you until 2 days beforehand. Just unlucky, just deal with it.
Yeah, but maybe not in the way that you'd like, because the people who have the time to practice will just do all the practicing, and the people who are fastest will be even faster. In general, I find that, or my guess is that the more practice actually benefits the slower people and probably brings them a little closer to the front rather than vice versa.
Oh, so what can we do? What can we do to hobble them, Brad? What can we do? What would make it hardest for you to turn up to an event like the Missed Apex iRacing event and not just immediately apply your goodness?
So I've got a couple of suggestions. If this is the aim and you want to keep a good quality of driving, so not random because people just haven't had a chance to practice and they're going to be off the track and that kind of thing. If you want to mix it up in terms of relative order, then I think my long-term suggestion of reverse championship order as grids for every race. I don't know how easy that is to do. In fact, it's probably quite hard to do on iRacing, but that would always ensure that the fastest drivers are at the back and the slowest drivers are at the front, and you'll always have this kind of big mixture. Alternative to that, you could go a little bit more artificial. It'll still keep things, it'll keep it sane. It'll mean that you won't have crazy, people crashing and that kind of thing because of lack of experience, but you could add ballast. You could do some kind of weight penalty, some kind of driver balance of performance like that to keep everyone close.
Does iRacing have a function to add weight to a single seater, Matt?
Double the fuel for the platinum guys.
Oh, yeah. But then that is a bit of trust on that, Matt, though. Guys, have you definitely put double the fuel in? Oh, absolutely. I definitely have.
Yeah, I agree. That does involve a bit of trust. I don't know if there's a way of enforcing certain penalties like that. Certainly in multi-class and GT racing, it's quite easy to do.
Yeah, and that was the other thing we were thinking about doing, but I don't think we ever are going to do it. If we've got a field of, say, 50 drivers, which is conceivable for next season, everyone always occasionally brings up like multi-class. So do you have like some guys in the Formula Renault 2.0, some guys in Formula 3? Does that add anything, do you think, to the event?
Personally, I love multi-class. I don't really know about it in single seaters so much, but yeah, I love endurance races and GT races, and I love that extra element of having different classes. But yeah, I think around 50 drivers is decent enough. You still got quite big grids in each of the classes if you're going to do that. But I'll leave that one up to you.
Okay, and Matt, you have been up to, I guess, much the same as me, just trying to survive in the Formula 3 officials.
Well, yeah, in addition to the endurance racing, and I'm also doing the PDC League with Kyle.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I'm also signed up for this other series, Major Series, and we have a big long race at Daytona in the 87 stock cars, which will simply kill you if you look at them wrong. Okay. And that's all this week. So it's kind of a busy week for me. So along with the Missed Apex thing, of course.
So I think we should kick off with your question, because I had exactly the same question. So I'll hand it over to you to quiz our expert, Brad Philpott.
Right. Now, I'm not often one to say that I'm fast, but I did notice that at the last track we raced in Formula 3, Okayama, I had legitimate for my split, which was usually second or third split, SOF 2000, 2100, 2200. Like top 5 pace. I was much closer to the fastest guys in my split than I normally am. And then I come to Brazil and I'm absolutely nowhere. What do I need to be looking at? What can I learn from this? How can I learn from these two pieces of data?
And also, Brad, just to add to that, like me and Matt are not very similar in our driving styles. However, at both Okayama and Interlagos, we're very, very similar paces. I've had exactly the same phenomenon. I turned up at Okayama and suddenly I was on pace, and I had no idea why. Went to Interlagos full of confidence, and I'm back off the pace again.
So I'll give you a couple of suggestions. Obviously, I don't know exactly why this is occurring for you guys, but here's some reasons that it could be. We've done quite a lot of driving at Okayama over the last year or so, I guess, with iRacing. I find tracks that I'm very familiar with in iRacing, even from different cars, whether it's MX-5 that I'm sure we did Okayama in before, or the Formula Renaults, it helps you in the next cars you drive it in. If I jump in a GT3, at least you know some of the little tricks that, some of the curbs you can use and that kind of thing. So maybe familiarity, maybe the setup. I mean, you guys tend to use different setups at different tracks. Maybe the setup just is better for you at Okayama than it is at Interlagos. Or maybe there's some characteristics of that particular track that you just get on with better. So Okayama, it involves lots of medium and high speed sweeping flowing corners. It's quite a wide track. There's not a massive amount of elevation change, and that there is over quite a short period, unlike Interlagos where you have big long hills. And Interlagos, although it is quite sweeping, there are some very tricky, technical, extremely slow tight corners. The problem is I'm sat here thinking, and Okayama has some of those as well, but I think they're maybe more geometrically boring and normal. You've got quite ordinary shaped corners, whereas Interlagos, you tend to have like tightening apexes over crests and that kind of thing. So maybe there's some quirks there that are just catching you out.
So the one thing I was maybe thinking about with Okayama was, for example, our friend Alex Van Gien, he's in the live chat. Hi, Alex. Has a very aggressive style. He was instantly struggling at Okayama, whereas I will tend to break earlier in general and try and, the term is carry speed, isn't it? So try and get rid of my speed early and then drive through the corner. Could it just be that some tracks are more suited to, say, a more patient style like mine, or a more conservative father style, and some are more suited to someone like Alex who just rings the neck of it all the way around the track?
Absolutely, different tracks with different corner types are suited to different people. I had an example of that myself this season in the Formula Renaults at Barcelona, which has never been a track that I've particularly thought I was amazing at or that I loved, but I couldn't stop winning races there. I felt extremely comfortable for whatever reason. The setup and my driving style and the real twisty, technical, slow section near the end, it all just seemed to gel, and I found it extremely easy. We then went to Zandvoort, I think was the next track or one of the next tracks, and I was absolutely nowhere, to the point where I just stopped doing the official races because I was worried I was going to lose too much iRating. And I'm sure that is because of just slightly different characteristics. I learned about myself in that Barcelona week that I'm quite good at the slow, twisty bits. And for some reason in that car, I just gelled with them. So that's definitely a phenomenon. And that's what you guys are experiencing here.
It can throw you off, can't it, Matt? Like, especially at our level, when there are so many variables. So Brad can probably look at an event and a race and go, oh, I know what was different. I was braking differently or whatever. For you and I, things change from week to week with where the wind blows. And every time we fall asleep, we forget a bit of iRacing skill. So it's quite kind of bad for confidence to suddenly turn up at Interlagos and go, I suck now. I want it to be last week again.
Yeah, no, and that was what I was hoping, like, just to gain some insight, be like, okay, I'm nowhere at Interlagos, but that's because I'm good at this kind of corner, and Interlagos has that kind of corner, and I'm still not so good at that, so I'm still learning, and not just, I've forgotten how to drive again.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, Brad. So we're establishing that at least it's a real phenomenon, and it's not just that, Matt turned up this week just being terrible.
I'd say as well, at Interlagos in particular, and I've done quite a lot of races there in recent times in various cars, and we did the VCO in the Formula 3 cars there. I found that there were quite a lot of little secrets that you could uncover that you had to do in order to be fast. So certain curbs you had to use more than you think you would probably legally be allowed to, for example, and really commit to them in order to be anywhere near the pace.
And
if you don't know them, and if you're not confident to do that, then you will be lacking until you've worked it out. So I know some of those areas now. I know where you can go four wheels outside the white lines and not be penalized for it. And it's kind of crucial to beat other people who know that. So maybe there's just a few of those secrets you guys still need to uncover.
So I've been definitely having to play off spousal credit and that kind of situation against my desire to compete in all the stuff I want to compete with this week. So I had to miss our normal Monday night practice session where we prepare for the F3 officials or whatever the swarm is doing. So I had to miss that on Monday. And then Tuesday I'm quite busy. I finally get a window of opportunity to go, right, I'm going to jump on. I'm going to do a F3 Interlagos official, get myself up to speed. iRacing was down for maintenance. I was like, no, it's the dad curse. Whenever you finally get time to do something, whatever system you're on needs an update or is down for maintenance. But they did have a feature where you could test any car, any track and go and do it. And it's interesting what you say, Brad. I was going around and I felt good. I felt as good as I did at Okayama. And then I compared times with everyone and I was like a second off. When I got into a practice session this morning, suddenly like turn 6 as you go up the hill before the real twisty bits, I think it's called Furicella or something. It begins with F anyway, the corner name. You can go all the way out wide. Like you can go miles off track, same as you can at like Watkins Glen, turn 1, and just go miles off track. And you'd never think about that on your own. And then on the inside of turn 7, the very first tight right-hand corner of that sequence, you're actually can go all the way inside the track. And then on the final corner, you're meant to be like 3 or 4 meters out on the rumble strips that look for all the world like they would kill you. And so you're right, you need to kind of unlock those secrets by following people around.
Yeah, and Matt Cook in the chat there is actually asking which corners, and you've told everyone basically those are the ones I would have highlighted.
Right.
That you can squeeze a bit more, use a bit more of the track limits, and find a bit of lap time.
So with the turn 8 right-hander that I was describing, it was nearly 3/10 difference if you were staying outside the white line or whether you put all 4 wheels over on the inside. So yeah, varying track to track. It would be nice if I could identify, and maybe we can build up a pattern of the tracks me and Matt turn up to and just are either lost or on the pace, and see if we can build up a pattern of, the tracks where you need to be a little bit more conservative, you guys are struggling, and therefore you should be able to change that into, well, maybe when I come to Interlagos, I need to just be like super like aggressive, attack all the curbs.
That's exactly the kind of thing you should be doing. Trying to really make a mental note of the types of places you struggle at. And when you find a solution, try and apply that to the other tracks that have similar characteristics. Interlagos, it's not just about that extra curb use as well. There's a few corners like that first very tight right-hander in the middle of the circuit, where staying off the throttle for longer than you might think really does pay off. Getting the car rotated that little bit longer in the middle of the corner really pays off on the exit. And for example, the following corner, which is kind of a left-hander which dips down and then sweeps back up the hill. There's corners like that where staying very tight and just being patient and really hugging the inside and paying a lot of attention to that gain you a lot of lap time, rather than what you think you should do is probably get on the power early and let the car run wide. Little idiosyncrasies like that you only uncover through trying it.
Yeah, the thing is, you can figure those out pretty quickly, whereas me and Matt, this is where we benefit from racing within the swarm, because, you know, we can ask silly questions like, in fact, here's one I always struggle with is with, say, a turn like Luffield or the double right-handers up the hill in Interlagos, since we're talking about Interlagos, where there's a choice between staying really tight and taking the shortest distance but losing speed, or like slingshotting around the outside so that you can get more pace on the exit. Stuff like that, I can never really figure out, I guess, without looking at the splits and just trying them out and doing it. But I just don't have that same instinct. And even if I am quicker one lap by going the shortest route, it could just be because I was terrible when I tried it the other way.
It's not always obvious, and it's not always the one that feels right either, which is why the relative or your lap time comparison with the red and the green in iRacing is so useful.
Yeah.
Just to try it and see which version is quicker.
And that leads us back to the question that we said we would answer this week, which was from Thomas van Kroonenberg. And he was basically asking, how useful is a service like VRS? He was asking if I use any of those analysis tools like that. I know some of our swarm drivers do have data services where they will compare the traces of a better driver against their traces, see if they're braking earlier and later. And he did also say, as part of that email, because he complimented us to start with, he said, anyway, enough feathers up your asses, as a term, which I have not stopped laughing about since last week. He emailed back and he said, I now realise that I cannot translate literally the Dutch proverb "Verin in je recht strekken." It does not translate directly to putting feathers up your asses. It doesn't work as well. But thank you for that, Thomas. And also Jake Oliver, who swarms with us, made a similar observation, which is, he said, as a mid-pack racer with limited time, I've been making an effort to do more analysis, and I found the returns to be significant. I use VRS and benchmark myself against their weekly pro. So, firstly, does anyone on the panel use any of those tools? Because currently I don't do anything like that. Matt, do you use that kind of analysis?
Yeah, I do have VRS, and I will occasion to have a look at it. But unlike other people, I mean, I guess you could use it to see where you're slower or how they are faster. But I have not had much use. Oh, I see they're braking 50 meters later, and then I brake 50 meters later, and I get to meet the wall again. You know, like how I apply that now. I haven't figured out how to successfully apply the knowledge. Obviously, Jake has much more so. So I will use it from time to time to see what I did better, but it's not really as useful to me, just, I guess, due to the way I learn tracks.
So we should put this in. What is VRS? Brad, you will be aware of it. Do you use it or anything like it?
So VRS, Virtual Racing School, I'm sure that's what that stands for, is one of the big couple of companies built up around iRacing, where they will provide a subscription service where you can get setups if you want for different tracks, or you can also have this data acquisition and comparison service, which is what we're talking about here. They're also one of the very top sim teams in the world. And I actually don't normally use this particular VRS software. However, I did this week because the team that I'm driving with at the coming DNLS this weekend, who are Williams Esports, they use it, and they're pro sim guys.
Wait! You can't just go Williams Esports.
Like Williams?
Yeah, so Williams, one of these like absolute high-end, top-level sim teams. I'm driving for them in the Nürburgring Endurance Series this weekend, because you have to have a real-world pro on your team to partner up with the sim pro, and I happen to be available, and their normal driver isn't. So I've been doing a lot of practice with them, and they use the VRS software. So I have usefully for this podcast seen how it works. And I've already used it to knock a couple of seconds off my Nordschleifer time versus the Sim Pro that I'm partnered with. And I find it extremely useful data analysis. I even use it at work. You'll have seen in our WhatsApp chat this morning, comparing a couple of different sets of tires at work. And I obviously use it in real racing as well. So I love reading data. I love looking into it, but I don't generally use it in my iRacing because you need to have someone better to compare against.
Here we go.
And I don't mean it like that. I mean, it's useful if you've got someone who you are confident in, that is, say, your teammate using the same setup in the same conditions, all that kind of thing. And I think on the VRS software, you can see what conditions and everything that the other driver set their time in. But I think it is extremely useful if used in the right way. And I just want to really touch on what Matt said. That doesn't mean that you can just read the data and see, oh, that really good driver braked 50 meters later, I'll just do that. I had that same experience this week. I saw what my teammate was doing, and I said to him, I can see that you're doing that. I can't necessarily do it. So at least you know the areas to try and improve on. It will point you in the right direction, and then you can incrementally try and get better in those areas. You can, and sometimes there's obvious things like, you're using third gear there. I'm using second. I'll just do third and, carry a bit more speed into that corner, for example.
A really obvious one that someone found when looking at my trace, and they just did it as a favor to me. And they just went, oh, wow, you're not holding the brakes for long enough. You're like, I hold the brakes way longer. And that was about 3 weeks ago, and has set me down quite a path of improvement. I was getting on the brakes very well, I think, and hard enough. And then you and I have been talking about them bleeding the brakes off and looking for the lock point. Basically, I was underestimating it at every stage through the braking zone. So now I've worked on really holding the brakes for a lot longer, which is letting me brake a lot later and deeper into the corner. It's been really useful. So my fear would be, how easy is it for someone like me who gets, as Matt knows, I get very flustered even reading show notes if they're not clear. And how can someone like me look at that data and easily tease it out, or do I need an expert to help me?
I think it's reasonably simple. It's difficult for me to try and put myself in these shoes because I've used data for so many years now. It's like just reading a language that I'm familiar with. But I think when you boil it down, all you're looking at is two colored lines, normally a red line and a blue line, something like that. And if you're looking at a speed graph, the line that's higher is going faster, and they're quite good, these pieces of software, at trying to make it obvious what it is you're looking at. They display the data in various ways. You can drag your cursor along and it'll show you exactly where on the track you are with a little track map. So I don't want to make it sound like it's super simple and maybe make it out to be easier than it is, but it's certainly not super difficult to get to grips with. And if you're serious about improving, it's definitely an area you should explore and maybe get good at.
I'm serious about overtaking Matt and getting better than Matt again. That would be nice.
I think the best thing really is that it's good for uncovering obvious problems, like you say with your brake shape. If somebody's braking too gently, or you're rolling on and off the brakes rather than getting on them hard initially and then bleeding off, you can see that kind of thing extremely starkly. And for if someone's flat out through a corner and you're lifting, you can see that very obviously. All those kind of things will hopefully at least uncover the direction you should be headed in.
Yeah, I should mention that VRS does have a free option just for the data. You don't get anything else from it, but it will take all your telemetry from iRacing and you can look at it. So if you want to just sort of experiment with it, you can do it for $0 or pounds or
that's good.
Currency units. But I would get frustrated. And one of the reasons I stopped looking at it so much is basically it boiled down to they brake later, they go faster, they step on the throttle earlier. And no matter what it was just those three things. So whenever I'm behind, I just think, okay, well, here's the problem. I'm going through the turn too slow. I'm not braking late enough, and I get on the throttle too late. And then I would try and fix any one of those things and just, spin or hit a wall or It was difficult for me to find a middle ground where I could actually improve my performance because it was always the same problem.
I think the important thing there is to just not try to overstretch, to not try and do it all at once. This is exactly what I'm experiencing this week, because I don't normally have a teammate who's as much faster than me as these guys at Williams are. And exactly as you're pointing out and you're explaining, you look at the data and you think, yeah, but when I try and do that, the car just crashes. If I can see that you're going quicker than me on the entry to that corner, but I tried that and I lost the rear. But I know that it's possible. I know the person's running the same setup. So I'm just trying a little bit faster. I'm just trying to edge a little bit more on the entry. And then once I'm used to that and it's fine, I'll try and go a little bit more. It's important to not try and just do it all and just, like you said initially, break 50 meters later.
I love how you Van Gened your microphone.
Yeah,
there,
sorry. I was getting animated, Spanners.
If you just turn the gain on your microphone down a touch, I think we've got you just a little bit high and a little bit hot. But I am enjoying your fancy new podcast setup, and look at you flexing your trophies and helmets in the background.
Yeah, these are just the ones that are allowed in the house, as you know. The garage is the place where most of the trophies live.
I'm just a little bit upset that we didn't introduce you as Williams Esports driver Bradley Philpott. We should have done that. That's so high profile. It's so exciting.
Officially, I'm a Butler Powell Esports driver, and they're loaning me to Williams Esports for the weekend. I think that's the official one. So Butler Powell are a team that I've joined because they are a Nürburgring real life race team. So they race in the VLN series that I race in real life. And they have a sim team as well. And they're really actually a sim team first and foremost, who also race cars. And I'm not going to be going and driving for them in real life, but I really like that they're like-minded. They love the Nordschleife, and they're really cool German guys, and they're going to do all the big events for me.
I'm noticing, obviously, this year, as people have turned to esports a little bit more, there's a real organisation around having a team. And most of the major motorsport out teams seem to want to have also some sim representation. And I think you're not going to you're not going to put that genie back in the bottle. I think esports and sim racing has kind of mainstream recognition now. And I think it's going to be kind of interchangeable with drivers like you. I'm not going to call you a journeyman driver, but journeyman drivers, will flick between professional esports teams and professional race teams as well. I think it will be seen as a legitimate supplement and or alternative to real racing.
There's actually a GT championship, and I don't know the name of it, real life GT championship in Europe this season, who I believe are apportioning a certain amount of points towards the real championship from the sim racing version of that championship. So at each race, I believe they're setting up an esports area, and the real drivers have to go and compete in the virtual race as well. And you can only get full points if you win both.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I think the lines are starting to get blurred, and obviously technology makes that more real as well. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll have a real mix where your sim pod just controls a real world car that it doesn't matter if you smash it at 500 miles an hour. Maybe there you go, Matt. There's your driver resolution problem. As cars get so fast and so amazing that they become undrivable, we just put the driver in a sim cockpit to control it.
Yeah, well, and that also solves the problem with the cars being too fast for the circuits, because then you don't have to worry about them hitting walls quite so much, do you?
Okay, we're getting a little bit off track, but I'm glad that there's a free version of that VRS to drive, not an advert from them, although we would appreciate any support from any racing schools or coaches or any iRacing peripherals out there who want to come and collaborate with us. Do get in touch, spannersready@gmail.com. Because when you said initially another subscription, I was like, oh, good. Because my wife is already delighted by the amount of money that iRacing and sim equipment costs. But I'm assuming that VRS also supply like setups and stuff the same as PDS as well. All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna give that a go. And can I just go and get any trace? So can I just find whoever's brilliant in my session and go, right, where am I losing time to Marcus Rodriguez? Or does it have to be someone I'm friends with?
You can be on a team and you can look at your teammates' traces. Or I think they provide their pro trace for you to compare against. I'm not sure if that's part of the paid service or part of the free service.
Right. Yeah.
But even if all you're doing, but they will give you your optimal lap and your perfect lap. to look at. So you can even just compare yourself to your perfect lap and see where you're losing time just to yourself in terms of ways to look for improvement.
All right, I'm gonna give it a shot. It's scary, but I'm gonna try. I would like to end the last 10 minutes or so, if possible, to ask a personal Spanners question, because quite frankly, the main reason I set this ball rolling was so that I could ask specific questions about my racing and make myself faster. And Brad, I think I'm serious about getting faster. I don't know if I've got the time to commit to it, but what time I have got, I am trying to use wisely. I can see some improvement, and I can put a lot of it down to just being able to ask you these questions. And you guys listening, you can also put questions to our experts, Brad, or anybody else we get on to help us with the coaching. Email me spannersready@gmail.com or missed-apex-podcast at gmail.com, or you can email Matt as well. That probably increases the chances of it getting actually put into any form of show notes. Matt is at mattpt55@gmail.com. So my question to you, Brad, is angle of attack into a corner. So just to put it into some context, whenever I go on board with you and watch you approach a hairpin, I am always surprised how often you leave the outside of the track on entry. So I'm always surprised how early you start pointing to the apex. So in my mind, the racing line generally kind of starts out as wide as you can, yeah, and then you kind of almost slingshot to the apex. So I always like turning quite late. I get the braking done, turning quite late, point to the apex, and then try and straighten it out. Whereas whenever I see you driving towards a corner, yeah, you leave the outside way earlier than I would. And so this is what I've been struggling with. Where am I pointing my car, or how do I decide where to point my car as I enter a corner? So that I'm not flying off into the barriers or leaving myself. Because when I look at your angle, I think I don't want to do that because that's giving me less space to turn and get the car rotated. Does that make sense? Do you recognize what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely recognize it. And at the risk of sounding too boring, this is extremely complex and depends on many, many factors. One of which is the confidence you have in your own car control. So there will be times where a certain driver will take a particular line because they are confident that at that line is the correct compromise between distance, the speed they're going to have to slow down to, and what they're going to have to do in terms of car control in the middle of the corner, or the risk that it's going to make the rear step out, for example. So I would hazard a guess that if you're turning in later than me for certain corners, and you're trying to give yourself a wider angle of attack and a kind of an easier time when you arrive at the apex, that might uncover the fact that maybe it's not the fastest way, because when the car is all completely nice and settled and you've got lots of time to think about things, it's not necessarily the fastest way through. Whereas I might be compromising with a little bit of mid-corner stability, but I've got to that apex earlier, faster, and if there is a small moment of oversteer, maybe I can collect it up. I'm completely just hypothesizing, because without a specific example, it's difficult to analyze why I did a certain thing versus what you did.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're seeing this as a general rule, maybe that's why.
So that's when I look at you, I think, well, you don't have any time to get it rotated. Whereas because I've gone out, I've waited later to turn into the corner. By the time I get to the apex or near the apex, I'm already pointing more towards the exit. Whereas you're kind of coming in shallower, if you like. But aren't you compromising your apex speed by not already being the correct angle? Yes, you've got there quicker, but you're making it much harder for yourself.
So depending on the corner and what came before this corner, what comes after, apex speed is definitely not the be all and end all. So it's one of the things that you're trying to maximize in any given corner. But if the following straight, for example, is quite short, then apex speed might be lower on your priority list than distance. Maybe it's actually quicker as a sector if you travel a shorter distance, because getting a better exit, for example, or carrying more speed through this particular hypothetical apex might be the less good compromise if you've got some options. So again, I'm completely just speaking hypothetically here. So without a specific example of a specific corner in car is tough. But there are multiple reasons why you might not put your entire emphasis on the maximum speed you can carry as a minimum speed through a corner.
Can I ask a specific question?
Yes.
Yeah.
About in this case, I actually have 2 corners from Brazil. The next to last corner, the left-hander that starts you going up the hill, and then the last corner, it would be the corners, the first corner really, but the second corner in Brazil that starts you down the hill. In both of those, I have come to the conclusion for myself that the most important thing is being able to be on the throttle as soon as possible, because there are very long stretches afterwards. And I will compromise other things, including carrying more speed through turn 2 in order to do that. And the same with the next to last turn. I will try and get the car turned and be on the throttle even well before I get to the corner, because it's such a long straight afterwards. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
That's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. And let's just take one of those. So I would call this the final corner at Interlagos,
Yeah.
but I appreciate there is a flat out corner which comes as you get to the top of the hill. But the penultimate corner, is that Glock Corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is kind of I guess, a little less than 90-degree left-hander up a steep hill, isn't it? So in Spanner's example, maybe we could say this is a corner where Spanners and I might drive it differently, and he gets a higher apex speed. He's started out wider and turned in a bit later, and is actually traveling faster through the apex than I am.
Yeah.
But my focus at that exact point, at that apex, as Matt highlighted, is on traction. I want to make sure that I can get on the power as early as possible with no danger of spinning the wheel. So I want the car very settled, facing a very specific way with the steering as straight as possible. And I don't want to be carrying speed through that corner, which is going to mean I'm running wider for longer and retaining some steering lock for longer, because that might potentially hamper my traction. And my focus at that point is driving up that hill without any loss of traction, completely under control. So that's just one example where it shows that the speed you carry in, or the speed that you reach the apex at, isn't necessarily everything.
So hard to describe while talking, but essentially on the entry to that corner, I'm staying to the right-hand side for quite a long time, and all my braking is parallel to the direction of the road, if that makes sense. So I'm braking, I'm getting all my speed off. I start to release the brakes, and then I'm starting to turn towards the apex and getting the power on. For you, when you're braking, you're already pointing to the apex, so you're no longer going parallel with the sides of the road. You're now going at a diagonal towards the apex already.
Yes, there's probably a bit more blending of the braking and the steering, sure, as well, which is something you don't necessarily see from an onboard unless you're looking at inputs as well with the brake trace and that kind of thing. But yes, this is a reason why I said it's a bit complex, because just because if you were to watch a video, say with no sound, and just watch the geometric line that certain drivers take into certain corners, just because that might look maybe better on one, doesn't necessarily mean that it's faster when you see all the other under the surface complexity that's going on. Like you mentioned, maybe I'm trailing the brakes in more aggressively because I'm more confident that if it starts to move around, if I start to lose the rear, I can collect it up and it won't affect the corner. And so that will certainly affect where I'm turning in, how early I'm turning in, and how aggressively I'm getting to the apex. Even if at the apex itself, I might be slightly slower.
This is horrible. I hate it when we identify a whole thing, a whole area where I'm just poor. So what would you advise to me? You know where I'm at generally, skill-wise. Do I want to be working on this? Do I want to be going, okay, for that last corner in Brazil, I want to be more or less, starting to turn and brake. There's a bit of crossover between the two and diving straight for the apex. Or do you just kind of go, no, look, at your corporate level, you're fine, you're doing what makes you comfortable, just try and do that better? Or do I need to move to where you are?
So this is advice I give for lots of situations in driving, trying to drive faster. But specifically for this one, if you're ever finding it easy, if you're ever finding that you comfortably made the apex, you comfortably got on the throttle, you comfortably were able to turn in, and the car wasn't trying to get away from you, then there's probably more time to find in that area. So I hate giving general advice because so often it doesn't apply to all situations. But as a general rule, if something feels too easy, you're probably not close enough to the limit. So for example, if you're turning in that bit later than me in our pretend example, and you're getting to the apex fine, and there's no movement from the rear, maybe try carrying more speed and turning in slightly earlier. and see what happens. See if you do. This is why I love the live delta. We spoke about
Yeah.
data earlier, but the thing I use most in iRacing is just the red and green numbers that appear. And I'm generally comparing against my optimal lap, but whatever you're comparing against, if it's better, it's green, and if it's worse, it's red. And I love using that to fast track my way to the best compromise in a situation. So just keep going until you can't make it go green anymore, and then maybe back off.
But I feel now like I've got options in every corner. So now when I'm practicing and I'm trying to improve my lap time, I've got options. And there is, of course, like there's a middle ground. It's not just diving straight for the apex or keeping it parallel in my kind of granddad, Uncle Spanner's way of driving. You can bring that into the middle. So you can start to go, okay, well, I'm going to be a little more direct this time. I'm going to go a little bit more towards the apex and improve that way.
Kyle Power in the chat brings up a great point as well, which is that the actual surface of the track, as in the dirt and the marbles and the grip level of a particular piece of tarmac, can play into this massively as well. It might be that if you were to draw a racing line on a piece of paper for a particular angle of corner, you might do one line, but in reality, maybe there's a grippier piece of concrete at the apex, like Watkins Glen, for example. There's a few of these where, even though it doesn't look necessarily right, it's just quicker to go in earlier because you get onto the grippier bit earlier. So you've got those things to consider as well.
So at Okayama last week, there's a big long back straight leading to a hairpin. I'd got very used to the fact that my braking point was about 75, something like that, and brake down into first gear. The first time I went to overtake someone, I went, all right, be a bit conservative, 80. Could not get it stopped at all, flung straight off. It's because there's like a bit of banking on the correct racing line that allows you to brake that late. And if you're not on that line and not on that banking, you don't get any of that effect. So yeah, there's an example there. Another one is in karting, Milton Keynes Daytona. If it's wet, there just happens to be a certain type of concrete on the inside of the corners that has grip no matter whether it's wet or dry. So the normal wet lines don't work. You just have to dive straight for that bit of concrete.
Yep, exactly. I've experienced that and got that wrong myself at that particular track.
Nice. Guys, 45 minutes in. I think that's about the right time for these podcasts. Thank you so much for joining me for this. It's nice to finally have like an outlet, a weekly outlet to sit and talk about iRacing. Because believe it or not, when I go into the house, I don't know what it's like for you guys, they don't want to hear it. I go in there and I'm like, I came fourth. I really had to struggle, but I got through a difficult start. And they're like, and they don't care at all, Brad. Not at all.
Whenever I try and tell Becca exactly what's happened to me in the last race, she always just says, I heard.
Oh, because you're on the stream talking out loud. That's fantastic.
She can hear me shouting at the competitors and being grumpy when it goes wrong.
You can follow Brad's stream by searching for Bradley Philpott on YouTube. And search for Bradley Philpott Motorsport as well, I think, and that will bring it up. And will you be streaming your DNLS race with Williams Esports?
Yes, I will. So for the first time in these series, I'm with a team which has a history of winning all the races. Generally, I'm with someone who's kind of like middle of the grid, and we'll try and be competitive, but we don't have that much of a chance of winning these big events. Williams seem to win them all. So I've got some big shoes to fill with the guy that I'm replacing, Sammy Matty Trogan. So I will be streaming it, and I'll do my best and see where we come. But hopefully, even if people don't watch my stream and they watch the normal official VCO like TV coverage with the commentary, hopefully we'll be featuring in that too if we're somewhere near the front. And same with the Nations Cup the day after.
I am going to be streaming my stuff as well, which will just be the F3 officials. It's not anywhere near the standard of Brad's, and it's very much a work in progress. But if you want to go ahead and subscribe to me, search for Spanner's iRacing stream, I think it's called, on YouTube. And Matt, you're concentrating, I guess, with me as well on the Missed Apex finale, Formula Renault 2.0, the last Formula Renault 2.0 race we're going to be doing. We're doing it at Interlagos as well. And I tell you what, I get so pumped up for these Missed Apex series events. For me, I know Brad's got his clever, for him it's like, oh no, that would be a distraction from my going and doing Williams Esports. For me, this is like my World Cup of iRacing competing in the map series.
Yeah, it is. The drivers are all very good. The competition is incredibly close. And it's just, it really is a lot of fun to participate. And I will say the live streaming and production values are also first rate.
Oh yeah, it's on this channel. So if you're watching this now, if you're on the audio version, search for Missed Apex Motorsport on YouTube. Subscribe to that. We're going to be doing any live versions of this podcast. We'll be streaming them on that channel, and you can watch it live. Also, there's great post-produced versions of the races as well. It's so much fun. We've got Chris Stevens and Chris Catman Turner commentating, and I love getting involved in it. And then when you watch it back and you hear your name on the commentary, you're like, oh, they said me on the telly. I know it's not telly, but it totally does feel like that. So follow the show at iRacing Podcast, Matt at MattPT55 on Twitter. Brad is at Bradley Philpott. I'm at Spanners Ready. We'll see you on Sunday if you're going to join us for the Formula One show with Chris Medland joining me and Matt for some F1 chat. Or remain indoors Thursday, 2 p.m. for me and Matt doing more hot takes on current affairs and such like. Wherever we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex iRacing Podcast. I feel faster already. Whenever the music closes on this show, I thought, I can go and put some lap time in. In fact, I'm going to go and do the 3:15 and do editing afterwards and hope she doesn't notice the extra time that it's...
I'm going to make a cup of tea and I'm going to do 2 hours of Nordschleifer practice.
Oh, nice. Very, very cool. Gentlemen, in fact, stream, I'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye.